All right, good morning, welcome. My name is Jeff Hicks, and for the next hour, 15 minutes, I will try to keep you awake. Hopefully you got enough coffee and peppered bacon to get you through this session on managing the registry with Windows PowerShell 2.0. I am, the title says they're a principal consultant. I'm basically an independent PowerShell geek, if you will. I write, I teach, I do projects, I do whatever people I'm kind of a professional IT pro geek. So I've been working with PowerShell. I'm a PowerShell MVP. I've been working with PowerShell for a long time. I've written quite a bit on PowerShell. Some of you may know me as Professor PowerShell. So I write for mcpmag.com. And in a previous life, I was also Mr. Roboto. Another column for Redmond magazine. So today, we're going to talk about working with the registry and PowerShell. Lots of demos here. All the demos and scripts and everything I'm going to be doing will be available later, probably next week at some point on my blog. I'll also tweet about it. You're welcome to follow me on Twitter at Jeff Hicks. So today I'm going to talk about the registry provider, which is the best way to manage the registry, using the .NET framework if you, for some reason, can't or won't use the PowerShell provider. And then lastly, if you are really desperate, you can use WMI. And hopefully, I've got lots of demos. I'm hoping I will still have time to get to that. So again, anything that I don't by chance get to, all the demos are done. So anything that I run out of time for, they will still be available for you. The mics are basically hot, except I think for the ones up front, but hopefully I can hear you. But anyone in the back, if you have a question, feel free at any time, just come up to the mic and ask, or if you're up front, speak up, wave your hands. It's kind of hard to see with the lights shining in my eyes, so throw something at me. Oh yeah, like the scripting wife here. Yeah. All right, so let's talk with the registry provider. The registry provider that ships with PowerShell provides an abstraction layer for commandlets. That's kind of the easiest way to understand what a provider is. This provider translates all the commandlets that you are used to working with in the file system into something that the registry understands. And this is the easiest way to work with the registry. Now, it only works locally, but that's really not that big a deal because if we have PowerShell remoting, any command that I can run locally, I can use invoke command or start a job and execute that on other machines. We'll talk about remoting a little bit later. The registry provider, when you start PowerShell, defaults to 2 PS drives. One is rooted to HKey local machine, and the other is to HKey current user. But you can add more. Actually, what I'm going to show you, you can add your own PS drives as long as they're somewhere in one of those hives. The provider is the registry provider, which you can see what it can do with the get PS provider commandlet. So you can see the drives and the capabilities. It supports transactions, which I'm also going to talk about, and the should process, which is what allows you to do the what if with a number of commandlets. To navigate a PS drive, you work with it the same way as you do a file system. You can use CD, you can use dir, or ls, depending on your bent. To create a new PS drive, we use the new PS drive commandlet. You need to specify the name, the provider, which is registry, and then some root. So this is going to create this command that you see on the bottom of the screen, would create a PS drive called current control, and it will be rooted to the current control set key in the registry. And it's just more fun to look at all this stuff. So let me get started here. Let me just switch. All right, I think that comes up. All right, so the first thing you should learn how to do is to get help. So I'm going to do help registry. There's a very nice little help topic. Gives you a little summary about all the things that the registry provider can do and some nice examples. So let's look at the PS provider. All right, so there's a little bit easier to see than it was on the slide. So there are my drives that are currently mapped. All right, so I'm going to get all of the PS drives that are just mapped to the registry. I could have just done get PS drive, but no need to clutter up the screen. So I use the -PS provider parameter to limit my display. All right, so there are, and I'm hoping those show okay on the screen there. It's getting cut off. So I have on HKey current user, I have a folder called, or folder, see, I'm already thinking of it like the file system, of a registry entry called JDHIT, and you can see there are a number of subkeys and properties. Now, let me point out here, I guess I can use my mouse. This thing here, this SKC, this is the subkey count. So underneath this PowerShell, I have one subkey, and then the VC is the value count, which are the properties, which is what you see over here. So this registry key that has all these funky characters has no subkeys, but has one value key called foo. And in a moment, I'll show you how we can get to those values. Let's change to the local machine, HKey local machine. Now, you have to remember to type the colon, even though the drive name is HKLM, you need to make sure you use that colon so PowerShell knows that you're changing to a PS drive. You do directory. Now there I am, local, HKey local machine on this machine. You will get an error about trying to access the SAM database. That's fine, I'm not allowed to access that. I really don't need to access that. So I can change directories. So, and you can see the prompt change. So I'm in the Windows, again, I keep on calling it a folder, the registry key. You can do cd ... to go back up, do directory. Let's kind of scroll by quickly. So you can see there's all of the things that you would see in the registry. Now, let me try a command like this. This is something that you might use in the file system. Okay, I want to find all the things in my registry that have PowerShell in the name, and I want to recursively search. Now, that doesn't work. I get an error there, and if you look at the error message, it says the provider does not support the use of filters. Well, yes and no. What it means is I can't use the -filter parameter, but depending upon the commandlet that you're using, let's redo this command, modify it slightly. There are other ways to do it. If I don't use filter, if I just say, give me the directory, I'm going to do it in the current path, or the path's going to be the current location, and I want to search star PowerShell star and recursively search, that works. Using include would also work. Okay, so there are ways around the limitations that the provider might have, but you have to look at the commandlet to see, is there another way that I can get kind of the same results? All right? So let's create a new PS drive. Just to show how easy this is, I'm going to create a PS drive called MS. And I'm going to route it, I need to resize my window here, to HKey local machine software Microsoft. And there it is. There's my new PS drive. I can change to it. So let's change to the current version folder. Now, just like in the file system, if you've got things with spaces, you need to quote it. And there's my path. I can do directory. There are all the subkeys. Okay? Any questions on that? Go back to A. All right. So let's modify stuff now, because that's the reason we're all here. I've got the registry, I've got stuff I need to change. Modifying, I'm also going to cover how you can actually read some information. So we're going to use, in the registry, we're going to use the item and item property commandlets. Get item and get item property. The path we're going to specify is that PS drive path for the registry. So the first example would give me a reference to that registry key. And the Second example is a typo. It is missing the, oh no it's not, take that back. I'm thinking of something else. This would then give me all of the properties or the registry keys right in current version. If I do directory, that's get child item, which would give me all the subkeys. But you know, this Windows NT current version, that's where things like registered owner, registered organization are stored. Those you would need to see with get item property. When I get to my demo, you'll see what I'm talking about. To create new things, we're going to use new item or new item property. When you specify to create a new registry key with new item property, you need to specify one of these values. The default is string. So if all you're creating are strings, you don't need to specify anything other than the path and the name of the registry item. But if you want to do something else, you would use one of these keys. Hopefully you'll never have to worry about trying to set binary. That would be, because that you'd have to write as an array of bytes, which I'm not going to take the time to do. Multi-string, you can pass it an array of values, and then D-word, Q-word. You can also use, if you want to create a new property, you can also use set item property. If you call set item property and the property, or the registry key that you're trying to call or create or modify doesn't exist, set item property will create it. If it already exists, then you can modify it. New item property, if you try to create a new key that already exists, it will complain. There's a -force parameter which should override that. I tend to, blew up there. I tend to just use set item property for everything, and then I don't have to worry about overriding something that already exists. Again, more item properties. If I want to get rid of things, you can use clear item. Clear item will leave the registry entry, but delete any value. You can use remove item if you want to whack it all together. And the same things for clear item property and remove item property. Follow the same principle. So let's take a look at those things. Let's see where I'm supposed to be here. Nope, I don't see in this room. All right, so we're back in our current version folder. Let's use get item, and I'm going to try to use the full parameters for the demo so it's a little clearer. Obviously, if you're doing this interactively, you don't necessarily have to do that. And can't find MS. Why is that? Which means I probably can't find the item property for MS. Demos will always fail at least once during the session. Yes, it's live. Oh, wait a moment. Why is that not... Let's try this again. Do get item. There we go. I was in the wrong. Pay no attention to the man behind the screen. All right, so there I am. So there's get item. So the current path, you can see the subkey count and the value count. I can do get item property now. And that gives me all those values that are in underneath the current version subkey. So there you can see things like the registered owner, the registered version, current build, all those fun properties. If you want to retrieve, because you notice, personally I think this is a pain, you always get these PS properties at the top that the PowerShell provider adds. Most of the time I don't want those, so you end up having to do a select or just specify the properties that you want. You can use wildcards. Let me modify. I thought I had changed this. Let me change my layout so I get rid of that scroll bar. I think my resolution keeps jumping. All right, so let's look at get item property for the path. And now let's filter out, basically by, I'm going to select everything. By just selecting the registry and the product name. So there's the registered owner, registered organization, and the product name. There should be more to that command that got truncated. Sorry about that. All right, so let's modify. I want to change that registered owner to, instead of JH, and let's set it to, and I'm sorry about that, the resolution for the recording and for the setup is not allowing me. Well, so I just set the value on registered owner. It's not going very well. Oh, man. There we go. Now it changed it. Set item property will also support dash what if, okay? Because we're modifying something in the system. So always, if you're going to do something, use what if. It'll also use dash confirm. So now you can see that I made a change. So now it shows TechEd user. So let's change to the HKey current user. And let me open up regedit. All right. That way I can create some stuff and you'll see that it really is happening. Let's look quickly at help for new item. You basically need to specify a path, the item type. So I'm going to create a new item. In the current location, I'm going to create a registry entry called TechEd foo. And if I come here to the registry, refresh, all right, see there's TechEd foo. You can also use the make dir function. It's a proxy function for new item. So there, I just made TechEd Atlanta. I hit refresh again. All right, so there's TechEd Atlanta. Let's put some stuff in there. All right, you can see also in the directory listing. I'm going to change, just for the sake of the demo, change right to the TechEd Atlanta. So I'm going to create a registry value underneath this key. We're using new item property. All right? So you specify the path, the name, the value, and what type of item you want to create. So let's do new item property. The current path. And I'm going to call it name. I'm going to give it a name and the value of Jeff. and boom, there it is. If I come back to regedit, nothing up my sleeve. Make this bigger so you can see. There we go. So there's the key that I just created. Now, if you want to create something other than a string, because notice when I did, my laptop has not had any coffee yet this morning, and so it's a little finicky. When I created a new item property, I didn't specify any registry type, so it defaulted to string. If I want to create something else, I need to specify the registry type. Here is a one-line command using the .NET framework that will enumerate, and these are the different types of registry entries that you can create. This basically is what I showed you on the slide. So I'm going to create a new item property. I'm going to give it a name of computer. The value, I'm going to use the environmental variable name, computer name, and the property type is the expand string. All right, there, that just got created. Let's create another one. We'll give this name size and the value 10, and we'll make this a D word. Come back here. All right. So there's the expand string, there's the D word. I think I got one more here. Do data. So I'm going to create a multi-string, or basically an array of entries. So the value is just a comma-separated list, right? PowerShell is going to treat that as an array. And you can see the way that data is presented there in the curly braces that indicates that it is an array. So let's modify, we're going to create I'm going to use set item property to create another value called city, give it a value of Atlanta. Because that does not exist, it will automatically create it for me. I could use new item property. Now, if you use set item property, by default, it won't write anything to the pipeline. So I'm going to use -pass-through so you can actually see that there is a result there. And actually, let's jump back here. All right, so there's are all of my entries. Multi-string, D word, their city. And I can then use get item property to evaluate to see what was created, and there they are. I think that's for you. All right, so I'm going to create one more property here called size. Actually, I've already created size. I'm going to modify size and give it a value of 20. Now, so that easily is changed. All right, so I'm going to do some fun stuff here now. I'm going to get that data key. Remember, that data key is an array. All right, so I'm going to use get item property to retrieve that data key and get the data property. And now I'm going to add a new value to that. So $data right now has A, B, and C. And it's just an array. So I'm going to add X to it. All right, so there's $data. Now it's ABCX. So I'm now going to update that multi-string registry entry with my new value of $data, and again do the pass-through so you can see the new result. And that would also show right there. Okay? So you can work with the data just the way that you would anything, like in the registry or in the file system. So let's get rid of some stuff. Let's clear the size property. Now, all that didn't delete it. Oh, I hit F5. I got 0, okay? And if I want to use get item property for that, okay, you can see it has a value of 0. So not really, it's kind of cleared. Better would be to remove item property. And I'll go back and check, and it should be gone, okay? I can also remove complete registry keys. I don't have TechEd Alpha. So I'm going to get an error for that. That was a leftover from a previous demo. I'll go ahead and run it anyway. It should still remove the first one, I hope. No, it didn't. So let's remove it. Remove item. Hit tab complete. There we go. And now it's gone. So all these things that I'm doing, you could easily do remotely as well. Any questions on any of this so far? To here. Let's see what's next. Oh yes, transactions. The registry is one of the few providers that actually supports transactions in PowerShell. Transactions allow for kind of an all or none approach. So if I want to make a bunch of changes, but I want to make sure that every single change or whatever action I'm taking, make sure that it works before I commit the entire thing. If there's an error anywhere along the way, then I want to cancel and roll back and not make any change. So we can do this in the registry, which seems to be a good thing because the registry is kind of a critical piece of Windows. To create a transaction, we use the start transaction commandlet in our PowerShell session. So that kind of starts the clock. Then, depending upon the commandlet, if the commandlet has the -use transaction parameter, you can execute your command with that commandlet using that parameter, and that action then gets added to the current transaction. If you don't get any errors along the way, then you can use the complete transaction, and that will then commit the changes that you have made in the transaction. If you need to roll back, undo transaction is the commandlet that you would use. I'm going to try, and hopefully this will work better. This does not want to do what I want it to do. Make sure I'm in the right spot here. All right. So just real quickly, the commandlets that support transaction, you use get command to find that. So I'm going to start a new transaction. Now I'm going to create a new item under HKey current user called critical. And I'm going to specify that I want to use transaction. All right? Now, in PowerShell, it looks like it was created. Although if I go to the registry, go to regedit, let me hit refresh, there is nothing here under HKey current user called critical. But it looks like there is. Let's create a new item property underneath critical. I'm going to call it A. Give a value of alpha. Again, tell it to use transactions. Let's do another one. Under critical, give this a name of seed, and the value is just going to be a random number up to 100. I'm going to make this a D word, and I'm telling it to use a transaction. All right, so that also was great. Again, there's nothing in the registry. So I should be able to, in the normal registry, get item critical should return the critical registry key that I just created. No, it does not. What I have to do is tell get item, oh, you need to use transaction. So we can go in and look at the transaction. Oh, those are what I've just created. If I'm happy with everything, I'll show you here, right? So F5, F5, nothing showing up there. Now I'll complete the transaction. Now I can just run get item property by itself for critical, and there are my values, and I would also now, so there's critical, okay? Question? It should roll, well, that's a good question. I don't know if it will configure to roll back on an error. It wouldn't necessarily roll back, but nothing would be committed. So any changes you made to that transaction would just disappear, which is what you would want, because that's why you're doing a transaction. Yeah, so right, the registry is a great place to be using transactions. You just have to remember, look at the commandlet and look for that use transaction parameter. There's a lot more. This is kind of a simple thing, a simple solution, but there's a lot more transactions that you can do. Other questions on transactions? Yeah? I believe that as soon as you complete the transaction, that's it. It doesn't, because you can't redo it. Oh, there is I believe there's a stop transaction. Nope, not this. I'll just do what I did before. There is an undo transaction, so I guess I think that's what you would use, or just yeah, I think you would use undo. So that we'll use to roll back. There's an about topic about transactions. I encourage you to take a look at. All right. We need to. No, once it's committed, it's done. Yeah, if for some reason you go, oh, I didn't want to do that, then you're back. Most of the few times that I have used transactions, it's been more in some sort of automated script where I want to make sure that these things happen, and then if they don't, then I have error handling to roll things back and report and all of that. This was a really kind of a basic approach to take. I'm hoping that you're not modifying the registry like every day. But some people like to do that, and if that's what gets you going in the morning. All right. Let's talk a little bit about security, because everyone always seems to want to modify permissions in the registry. Anyone want to modify registry permissions? One guy, okay. The rest of you are smart. All right. This is not necessarily a lot of fun, modifying the registry, or modifying any sort of permissions, I should say. We need to use, in PowerShell, we need to use the get ACL and set ACL commandlets. This is not a trivial task. I'm going to show you how to modify it. It's not as easy as we would like it to be. I'm hoping future versions of PowerShell will improve this support. Personally, when people say, oh, I need to modify security, really on anything, I say use a command line tool like sub and ACL. For the registry, that's what I would use. But if you want to do it with PowerShell, we can do that. So let me get set up here. And I mistakenly put this back in. All right. So I'm going to use getItem and get that TechEd key. I'm just going to save it to a variable. Just makes life a little bit easier. Now I'm going to use getACL. GetACL needs a path, which is the path it can get from that $key variable. There's the ACL. So there's the path, the owner, and the access. It's a little bit easier to take the ACL and pipe it to format list, because now I can easily see who has access to this. Or you can also just enumerate the access property, which is a collection of access rules. And so you can see the registry rights and the identity reference. Now my machine just does not belong to a domain, so Serenity is my local computer name. If you were in a domain environment, obviously you're going to see domain/username or group. So I don't have a whole lot there. One thing you might want to do if you're wanting to build some reports to find out who has access to a key, I'm going to get my access sorted by the identity reference, and then format a table with the identity reference, well, you'll see here, and the registry rights. So now I can see who has what access and what permissions they have to this registry key. All right, so I'm going to decide, you know what, I need to grant access to this registry key to another group. And I need to do this, I need to define a new access rule and then add it to the ACL, and then you set ACL to modify the registry. So the first thing I need is a security principal object. So this is where it doesn't get easy. I have to specify, I'm going to have to create a, excuse me, I'm going to create a variable called $principal that is an NT account. Now, if I was in a domain, I would specify domain/username. Because this is local, all I need to do is just specify power users. So this will reference the power users group on my laptop. So $principal, you can see I got a value there. Now the next thing I need to do is I need to specify what type of registry rights do I want to grant. Well, I need to know what they are. So I'm going to enumerate the system.security.accesscontrol.registry rights. All right, so those are all the different ways. The easy thing is obviously full control, but I don't want to do this easy. So I'm going to create an array, because I want to specify a combination of rights. All right, so the value that I'm going to pass for the registry rights will be a bitwise combination of whatever registry rights I want to grant. In PowerShell, the easy way to do that is to just create an array of those. So I'm creating an empty array. All right, so I'm going to type out the registry rights that I want. I'm going to pipe that then to for each. and then I'm going to add each write as a system.security.accesscontrol.registry_rights object. So I'm taking those strings. Now, I'm trying to keep my demos as one-liners, so it's sometimes a little hard to read. If you were doing this in a script, feel free to break it out and make it more legible. But this is kind of a clever little hack to take a series of strings and then using the -as operator, treat it as the registry write object. So now I'm going to create a new rule using new object, and I have to create a system.security.accesscontrol.registry access rule, and I need to specify the principal, the write, and then in this case I want to allow. Your other option would be deny. All right, so there's the rule. See, it looks similar to what I got when I did $ACL.access. Now I need to add that rule to the ACL object using the addAccess rule method. Now finally, I can use setACL to set that object, and using the $ACL that's now been updated. Now setACL does not write to the pipeline by default, so I'm going to use -pass-through. So I can see the results, and I'm just going to select the access property. Now remember, that's a collection of access rules, so I'm going to use the -expand property parameter. And I want to get all the ones where the identity reference matches power, just so I can verify that I did add that group, okay? So now they have been added, and if I were to go to the registry here, refresh, permissions. All right, so there's power users. They've now been added, and if I come to advanced and look at the permissions, there are the permissions that I specified, all done for me. Not for the faint of heart. It can be done. I wish it was an easier way to do it in PowerShell. Any questions on that? Oh. I just used the system enum and got names for the system security.accesscontrol.registry rights. And both getACL and setACL also support transactions. Okay? So now if you need to do permissions, you know how to do it. We're doing on time here. Oh, wow, I actually might make it through everything. So everything that I've shown you, you can do remotely using PowerShell remoting. Now that does require, of course, PowerShell version 2 at both ends with remoting enabled, but hopefully you are there now, or will be. That's where you're getting to. Because believe it or not, everything I've shown you, this is the easy way to manage the registry with PowerShell. Everything I'm going to show you from here on actually gets even more harder and gnarly. The way that I would do something remotely is to use invoke command. Invoke command, get item property, the path that I want, select the properties that I want, and then specify the computers that I want to run that on. So on computers Serenity and Quark, I would get a result back of that query just as if I was on that computer, right? That's the beauty of PowerShell remoting. So I'm really not going to do any remote demos because I kind of already done them. All you need to do is take whatever you're doing and put it in an invoke command or any command that will execute remotely. Start job, invoke command are the two you're most likely going to use. or put it in a script and have that script run remotely as well. Any questions on that? That's the easy way to do remoting and remote management. If for some reason you don't have remoting enabled, or you just like a challenge, you can use the .NET framework and the classes directly. The commandlets, kind of are wrappers for the classes, but you can use them if you want. We're going to use the Microsoft.win32.registry key .NET class. Now, there is something nice here, because this will support remote connections with the current credentials. There is a way to do impersonation, but I'm not going to get into that. So here's kind of the recipe if you want to use the .NET framework. We're going to use the open remote base key method, and you specify the hive that you want to connect to, either local machine users, classes root, or current user. So you actually do have a little more options about what you want to connect to. And remember, current user is you. It's not the current user currently logged on. A lot of people always want that, and that's not what this is. This is whatever credentials you're using, it will be your current user hive on that computer. We're going to use the create subkey and delete subkey to create and delete keys, and get value and set value to modify values, and open subkey and get subkey names to enumerate. Now the downside with the stuff I'm going to show you is it's all almost like systems programming, but I'm not using any commandlets, so there's no support really for, there's no what if, no confirm, no transaction support. Question? That I'm not sure about. I'm an IT pro guy. I try to stay away from, this .NET stuff if I can. It gives me cooties. I've not done a lot with .NET impersonation, so I wouldn't know. Any .NET developers that could answer that question? His question is, if I use impersonation, and I go to current user, am I getting the impersonated credentials that current user? I would think you would, but I don't know. Ed, do you know? But what if you're using impersonation? You'll have to try it and let me know. Now let me show you how crazy this is. Let me go, I think I can get out of this. All right, so Microsoft Win32 Registry Hive. I'm going to create a variable called $hive local machine. So I have to cast my variable to that object type. Question? Yeah, I keep trying to fix it and it won't. I'll try one more time. Yeah, I keep trying to match the screen width. Let's change that to, there we go. See if that keeps. All right, so I'm going to pretend that I'm connecting to a remote computer. So I'm going to find a variable. I'm actually going to use my local computer name, but this could easily be a remote computer as long as the credentials I'm using have the right permissions on that computer. All right, so let me type this out and then explain what's going on here. So I'm going to create a new variable called $HKeyLM, which will be the result of calling the open remote base key method from this registry key class. And I'm specifying I want to connect to local machine on whatever the values of $computer name. Again, there's no commandlets here. It's just kind of programming. So there's $HKeyLM. Looks a lot like what you get with getItem and getItem property. Subkey count, value count. But it's not nearly as rich. Now this is an object. If you're doing something new that you've never seen before, let's pipe it to getMember. All right, so you can see lots of methods here that I'm going to use. Creating subkeys, deleting subkeys, getting values, getting value names. These are things we're going to be working with. All right, so I'm going to create a variable that just is going to be a path to the snap-ins registry entry for PowerShell. And now I'm going to call the open subkey method and open that path, save that result to a variable called $subkey. All right, so there's the name property. You can see that I have that registry entry. Now, in order to enumerate, to find out all the subkeys and stuff, you have to call all of these methods. So I'm going to call the getSubkeyNames. All right, so these are all the snap-ins that are installed on my computer. And these are, I could even, I'm not going to try to drive down to there. You'll see it from PowerShell. So just as an example here, I think I can scroll this down a little bit. Can you kind of figure out what's going on here? I'm going to call the open subkey method of the current object that I'm in. And the subkey I want to open is basically the first value that I got with getSubkeyNames. This is going to open the Microsoft.bdd.ps snap-in registry entry and save the result to $snap-in. Now, if I want to see what are the values under snap-in, I'm going to use the getValueNames. All right, so I've got registry entries for application-based assembly name, description, version, but no values. So I need to get the values using getValue. Now, if you know the value name, then you can get the value using the getValue method. Seems simple enough. So the vendor is Microsoft. All right. So I want to enumerate all of the snap-ins and get some key information. So I'm going to create a hash table to help me with this. The first entry I'm going to put in is basically this name property, which will be the path to the registry key. All right, so what's this doing here? Get value names, right? This is going to give me Microsoft.bdd.ps snap-in. There are probably many ways that you could do this, but in essence, I am going to enumerate and recursively go through each of these subkeys and get some specific properties. And I'm doing it in a one-line command here. So the hash is going to add the current, the snap-in name, and then it's going to add for the key, the key will be the snap-in name, the value will be the getValue method of that key. All right, so there's $hash, there is the name, and then they're all the appropriate values for each of those. I'm sorry, that's just for the, no, that's for all of them. Let's get the values here. And we create an array to hold the values that I'm interested in. For each snap-in that's in my subkey, I'm going to pipe dollar values to another for each and list the value name and then get the value of basically module name, vendor, version, and description. Not very pretty to look at, but you can kind of see module name equals, and there's the path, the vendor, the version, description, and so on for each one of those. Now you can see why using commandlets are much nicer. In a script, I would probably use a new object and create a custom object with this information to write it out, but again, just don't want to keep it as a one-liner. I just decided to take this approach. Look at one other thing here. Let's modify some stuff. I'm going to open that current version registry entry again and get the value for registered owner. Okay, so it's still set to TechEd user. We said that earlier. You can use, in order to modify things using .NET, and also when we get to WMI, you need to know what type of registry key it is. So I'm going to use the getValueKind method and specify, hey, look at registered owner and tell me what it is. And it's a string. So the string is, excuse me, the string is the default. So I'm going to call setValue and change that registered owner to Professor PowerShell. Oh, no, I can't. No, exception calling cannot write to the registry key. Well, here's what happened. Let me run this again with a slight tweak. Full path and add $true. When I first created $CV, I basically opened up that subkey in read-only. So by specifying $true, now I have opened up this key in a write mode. So now I can run setValue, registered owner, Professor PowerShell, and now that works without any complaint. And if I use getValue again, I can see that it has in fact been changed. I can create new values just by simply calling setValue. So I created a new entry called TechEd with the value of Atlanta. If I want to set a different type of property, like dword, so I'm going to create a value called d, value of 1, and then the third parameter now becomes something other than a string. So I'm going to do dword and get the value. You can see that it's 1. I can also use getValueKind of d, and in fact see that it is a dword. If I want to delete things, delete value, wax them away. Let's delete TechEd, he's gone. Okay? So using the .NET framework can be done. It's not as friendly as using the commandlets or the provider. Any questions on using the .NET framework? I mean, if you're comfortable with .NET classes and stuff, go right ahead. Yeah? The only reason I would think of is you can get access to a few more registry hives that you can't get with the registry provider. Those were let's go back to my, I thought I had that in the slide here. Local machine, users, classes, root, which you could get through another way. That's just a shortcut anyway. Probably the big thing would be users. So if for some reason you wanted to get to the users hive, you would have to use the .NET framework or WMI, which I'm going to show next. Yeah, personally, I don't see much value because you have to go through, and especially if you are wanting to create a lot of things or enumerate or search, because you have to get you got to get the values, you got to get the names, then you got to get the values of those names. So it's very tedious. The registry classes do allow you to connect to a remote computer. But this then is running, if I'm doing this remotely, I've got all that traffic going back and forth. Whereas when I'm running something with PS remoting, the commands are running on that machine. See, here they're running on I basically am sending the command, hey, do this, and then I get a result back over the wire. In remoting, I get the benefit of the secure encrypted channel, and the commands are happening on that machine. And also with remoting, I can scale out. So I need to query a registry value on 100 machines. I can easily do that with a one-line expression with an invoke command and get the result back. That would be much harder. You couldn't do it with the .NET framework. You would have to sequentially go through every computer. So the provider's a much better way to go. Yeah?
What if you had different versions of PowerShell in your environment? Would this process here work if you didn't have 2.0 and promoting enabled?
So the question is, what if I have different versions of PowerShell? Yes, if you have PowerShell version 1, then remoting is not an option. And if for some reason you can't upgrade to version 2, yeah, then you would need to resort to using the .NET framework here. But hopefully, because PowerShell version 2 is now available for everything, well, everything, XP, Service Pack 3, and later, that you can get rid of PowerShell version 1 and take advantage of all the cool stuff in version 2. But that's why I'm going through and showing the provider, which is the preferred way to do it, .NET framework if you kind of have no choice. And then the last way to do it is with WMI, which is really ugly. Well, it is. When all else fails, there is a standard reg provider that you can use. Expect poor performance. At least in my experience in ever working with this, it's always been dirt slow. Okay? This also will require, and this will also be true of using the .NET framework, the firewall considerations. Right? I'm going to be using RPC and DCOM, whereas when I'm using remoting, PowerShell remoting, that's just a single port that I can control. Another benefit of using the remoting. Conceptually, we're going to work with the registry the way we did in .NET. We have to connect to the Hive, open the subkey, get the names, get the values. It's just that the methods are slightly different, but the technique is the same. So here's an example. You would first create an object for the standard reg prov WMI class. You then need to access the Hive. Now, unfortunately, you have to access the Hive by a constant value. So if I ever have to do WMI registry stuff, I will usually create a variable or a hash table or something so that HKey LM and what the value is, because I'm never going to remember that. You're not going to remember, you've probably forgotten it already. Local machine, current user, current root, and HKey user. Very similar to what we get with .NET. We're going to use the same type of methods. The tricky thing is when I want to get the value with WMI, I have to know what type of item it is. Is it a string, a binary, a D word? And then I have to call the appropriate method in order to get the value back, which gets really tedious. So let's take a look. Keep blowing stuff up. I want to make sure everyone's awake. Let's see. All right, oh, good, everything changed. Or, sorry, nothing changed, everything stayed the same. All right, so I'm going to start out, and I'm just for the sake of something different, I'm going to create a hash table that has the registry keys and their constants. I'm going to call it $hives. All right? Let's create that WMI class for the standard reg provider. Now, you can specify, and here I'm specifying basically my computer name, but if I was doing this remotely, I would specify remote computer. This uses your current credentials. There's no provision when you're using the WMI class to specify alternate credentials. And I've not found any way to get this to work with get WMI object. I don't think you can. All right, so there's the object, and it defaults to the root default namespace. Now this object has a number of methods, has actually very few properties, but these are the methods. You can see the methods here for like get binary value, get dword value. So you have to identify what type it is and then be able to call the appropriate method. All right, so I'm going to create a variable called $software. I'm opening using the enum key method, and I'm specifying $hives.hklm will return the constant for the HK local machine hive, and what I want is the software key, right, that top level software. And I say that's your variable. So there's the WMI object I get back. It's not very friendly. Return value of 0 means it's successful. Anything else would be obviously an error, and you'd have to track down what that error means. Now see here, S names. These are all of the subkey names that are underneath software. But just a property, so I can do $software.snames, right? So they're all my subkey names. Let's create a variable for the registered applications subkey under software. Now, that $reg, remember, is my WMI standard reg prov object. So I'm going to call now the enum values method, again, the HK local machine hives, and the path that I've specified with $reg path, the registered applications. Let's see what $values is. All right, again, return value 0, that's good. You can see the S names, which would be all the values, and then you see types. You see 1, 1, 1, 1, and so on. There is a corresponding S name and type that go together. So Windows address book is 1, Paint is 1, Windows search is 1, and so on. Those types indicate, those values for types indicate what, well, as the name implies, what type of registry entry it is. So let's look at the S names, all right? So there are the, in essence, these are the registered applications on my laptop. And all the types are 1. So I'm going to create a hash table, because what I need to do, now in this case, because they're all 1, I wouldn't have to worry too much because I know they're all strings. But let's say I'm doing something where I might have a variety of types. So I'm going to create a hash table that defines what each type is. So string is 1, expand string is 2, 3, 4, and 7 for multi-string. I'm not sure what happened to 5 and 6, but maybe they had to cut back somewhere. So now I'm going to call the getEnumerator method of my hash table, which is $types. Now, because I know that the value is 1, I'm just going to pipe that to where object. So I want to say, hey, find the hash table entry where the value is equal to 1. All right, so that tells me that it's a string. Now that I know that it's a string, I can use the getStringValue method again, on the WMI object, specify the registry location, which is HK local machine, the path, and then the value. And I'm just going to get the snames property, but the first value. So the value then is software client, so that is for Windows address book. The value that goes along with that registry entry is what I just retrieved there. And if I want to be a little neater about it, I can just tell it, oh, I just want the S-value property of this object. So then I could export that to a file or whatever I need to do with. Let's build another hash table here and take all those S names, and I'm going to add them to the hash table. This is similar to what I did before in the .NET framework. I'm going to add each key and get the value. Now, because I know there's string values, I can use getStringValue. Otherwise, I would have to have a switch construct using my hash table to say, oh, if this is a string, call getStringValue. If it's a D word, you'd use getDword value. So it gets a little tedious. I told you this was not very friendly. All right, so now $hash though, so there are all my applications and then the value that corresponds to that in the registry. No commandlets, there's no transactions, no what if. It's just not very friendly. I can quickly create a key. I'm going to create under HKey current user, I'm going to create an entry called PowerShell TFM. Oh, and by the way, I'm going to be at the Scripting Guys booth at 10:30. If you have more questions or have stuff you want signed or want to slap me around, go, what are you talking about? Just come by. Otherwise, I'll be hanging around on the floor probably most of the day. Let's create another key. You can also create this is nice, you can also create an entire hierarchy. So key 1 and key 2 will both be created at the same time. Let's set some string values. Under the HKey current user, the path, which is to key 1, I'm going to create sample key. And then the sample key is the name and then the value. I'm quickly running out of time here. And then we'll set the D word. Okay? I'll just pop over here real quickly. Hit F5. All right, so there's the key that I created. There's key 1. There are my references and key 2. You can also delete registry entries with the WMI provider. But in order to delete this, you have to delete this key first, and then this key, and then this key. Unlike in the provider, PowerShell provider, where if you delete an item, it will delete everything underneath it. In WMI, you have to go back up. So, recommendations in my last minute here. Use commandlets and the provider wherever possible. Use the provider and PowerShell remoting. Use transactions, especially when you're modifying the registry. And absolutely, you got to test all this stuff in a non-production environment. Resources. A lot of the stuff I've shown you is in the PowerShell TFM book that Don Jones and I co-wrote. Other places that I would recommend, PowerShell in Action, Bruce Payette's book is in version 2. They have the bookstore. PowerShell Cookbook by Lee Holmes. There is a PowerShell module for remote registries, and I've left the path there that some people in the PowerShell community have developed, and there's my blog link. Any other questions or answers? I can't believe I squeezed through all that. And then the usual track resources, scan the tag. You could win a cup or whatever those prizes were. So my time is just about up in like 2 seconds. Again, I'll be at the Scripting Guys booth. If you have other questions, please come by. I'll be there about 10:30. Thank you.